Welcome to the Unitarian Church in Fall River, where we think religious questions are important, but we want to work out our own answers. We gather to share ideas and support one another. We gather this hour as people of faith, having sorrows and joys and needs and gifts. We light the beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning and in celebration of the life we share together. For the opening hymn, it's a little weird. I'm going to ask you to sing the words of one hymn, but ignore all the music. If you know how to read music, just do that. But I like the tune of another much better.
And adapt it.
Adapt
it, yeah. If you look at the bottom of any of your hymns in general, in the lower right-hand corner, for instance, this tune says Truro, LM. And any other hymn that has that marking on it, the music will match and work inside your interchange. It's the phrases. Okay, here it goes.
Oh, look at the notes.
And please join in our affirmation. It's in the order of service. It's the usual one. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, thus to be covenant with each other and with God. Are there announcements?
The first announcement is that I'll be preaching the ordination sermon from my nephew, who is the 8th generation of American family to be ordained in Christian ministry, will become an Episcopal priest. First one in the history takes us back to John Wesley, who attended the Aldersgate meeting house in London, which was a Moravian, still is a Moravian church in London, and that's where he said he felt his heartstrings to the moon.
So when are you doing this?
Next Saturday, and somewhere in there.
It'll be in person, huh? It'll be in person?
Yes.
You'll be there in person. Nice.
And the other announcements are usual, but for Course in Miracles, which will be next Friday at 11 a.m. I'll be posting this. We now are on YouTube. We have a following of
386 in the right now.
That's what we're 24.
24 different countries.
Oh, 20.
That's about 170 countries to go.
But who's counting?
Don't worry, you'll get there.
Yes.
So, I have several announcements. I wanted to let everyone know that our worship service will be conducted by, or led by, the student Ruby, who was here a couple months ago. Some of you met her already. So that's my first announcement. The second announcement is that Susan DeYoung sent me an email this morning saying she's not feeling well. She's getting tested on Tuesday. She wanted to send you all her best regards, and I think maybe a prayer or two if you think of her, and hopefully she will be okay. I asked her to let us know. And I think, especially after the fact that Alan and Tricia just left because someone just texted them immediately after I kissed them both, that I'm not kissing anybody anymore. Don't take it personally. I love you all. You are my joy, my church family, and my friends. But no, I'm done kissing.
Yeah. The Invocation is by Walt Whitman. He's kind of ordering us around. I like this. This is what you should do, he says. Love the earth and the sun and the animals. Despise riches. Give alms to everyone who asks. Stand up for the stupid and crazy. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. That's particularly relevant to Unitarians. Argue not concerning God. Have patience and indulgence toward people. Re-examine all that you've been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your soul, and you shall be a great poem. I don't have a prayer today. I have a meditation that I kind of like. It's short, by Charles Swindoll. It's called Attitude. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, more important than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, or a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play the one thing we have, and that is our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. You are in charge of your attitudes. And now let us be silent together to create an opportunity for prayer or meditation. It doesn't matter if you never read the comics. It doesn't matter if the strip Calvin and Hobbes was not in the paper you read. After all, the strip ended 26 years ago. 26 years ago this past week, in fact, right at the end of 1995. It's about a little boy named Calvin, who's 6 years old and in the first grade, and is kind of a wise guy. And Hobbes, who actually is technically Calvin's stuffed tiger, but whenever Calvin's alone, he imagines that Hobbes is the size of an adult and speaks. And in almost all of the strips, it's just Calvin and this imaginary adult tiger that he's speaking to. and the sermon later. I'm just going to read you the dialogue from 28 of those strips, which culminate, I think they amount to basically a Unitarian sermon. But first, as a reading, I'd like to read Bill Watterson, who was the author of the strip, was interviewed right before the strip ended. One of the reasons that the strip, by the way, may be gone from your consciousness is Bill Watterson never consented to commercialize Calvin and Hobbes. There are no Calvin and Hobbes coffee cups, T-shirts, none of this. Lunch boxes, or if there are, they're rip-offs. They're not authorized. So here's Bill Watterson explaining the characters, sort of. Calvin is named for a 16th century theologian who believed in predestination. Most people assume that Calvin is based on a son of mine or based on detailed memories of my own childhood. In fact, I don't have children, and I was a fairly quiet, obedient kid, almost Calvin's opposite. One of the reasons that Calvin's character is fun to write is that I don't often agree with him. Calvin is autobiographical, though, in the sense that he thinks about the same issues I do. But in this, Calvin reflects my adulthood more than my childhood. Many of Calvin's struggles are metaphors for my own. I suspect that most of us get old without growing up, and that inside every adult, and sometimes not very far inside, is a bratty kid who wants everything his own way. I use Calvin as an outlet for my immaturity, as a way to keep myself curious about the natural world, as a way to ridicule my own obsessions, and as a way to comment on human nature. I wouldn't want Calvin in my house, but on paper, he helps me sort through my life and understand it. Hobbes is named after a 17th century philosopher with a dim view of human nature. Hobbes has the patient dignity and common sense of most animals that I've met. His reserve and tact seem very cat-like to me, along with his barely concealed pride in not being human. Like Calvin, I often prefer the company of animals to people, and Hobbes is my idea of an ideal friend.
Okay. This is not a terribly serious song. We're talking about Calvin and Hobbes, Hobbes being the tiger. So you'll note that Nancy actually has on the record couldn't find the tiger thing. But we came up with the tiger song actually by Buck Owens, one of my favorite country artists, and he wrote this back in the early 60s. He said they were, he and a songwriting partner were trying to come up with a theme of a song. And at the time, Exxon Oil Company had a promo, put a tiger in your tank. And people of a certain age might remember that. And in fact, they came up with little tiger tails, little orange and black things that were sticking out of people's gas caps for a long time. So they started going on that one and came up with this one, which is I've got a tiger by the tail. I've got a tiger by the tail, plain to see. Well, won't be much when you get through with me. Well, I'm losing weight and I'm turning mighty pale. Well, looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. Well, I thought the day I met you, you were meek as a lamb, just the kind to fit my dreams and plans. Now the pace we're living takes the wind from the sails. Now it looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. I've got a tiger by the tail, it's plain to see. Well, it won't be much when you get through with me. Well, I'm losing weight and I'm turning mighty pale. Well, it looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. Well, every night you drag me where the bright lights are found. There ain't no way to put me down. I'm about as helpless as a leaf in a gale, and it looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. I've got a tiger by the tail, it's plain to see. Well, it won't be much when you get through with me. Well, I'm losing weight and I'm turning my pale. Well, it looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. Well, it looks like I've got a tiger by the tail.
Thank you. Bill Watterson just said that Calvin was named after the theologian who believed in predestination. This first strip talks about Calvin expressing his feeling that he himself is predestined. I have to do two voices. My normal voice is going to be Calvin, and when I have to be Hobbes, I'll try to lower my voice and make it a little slower. And I'll also do this when there's an adult that Calvin is talking to. Once he talks to his mother, and 2 or 3 times he talks to Miss Wormwood, his first grade teacher. I'm at peace with the world, Hobbes. I'm completely serene. Why is that? I've discovered my purpose in life. I know why I was put here and why everything exists. Oh, really? Yes, I'm here so everybody can do what I want. It's nice to have that cleared up. Once everyone accepts it, they'll be serene too. And Bill said that Hobbes was named after a philosopher who had a dim view of human nature. And here's a strip that reveals that. Hobbes, do you believe in evolution? No. You don't think humans evolved from monkeys? I don't see any difference. Calvin doesn't enjoy school. He's a smart kid. He has a lot of native intelligence, but he just doesn't enjoy school. Here's a strip indicating his native intelligence. I like cereal to crackle and pop when I put milk on it. See, Hobbes? Very entertaining. I've never seen Raisin Bran do that. I put in an Alka-Seltzer. Because of his native intelligence, Calvin is aware of what he calls the big picture. Miss Wormwood, I have a question about this math lesson. Yes? Given that sooner or later we're all going to die, what's the point of learning about numbers? Turn to page 83, class. Nobody likes us big picture people. They say the world is a stage, Hobbes, but obviously the play is unrehearsed and everybody is ad-libbing their lines. Maybe that's why it's hard to tell if we're in a tragedy or a farce. We need more special effects and dance numbers. You know, Hobbes, some days even my lucky rocket ship underpants don't help. Well, you've done all that you can do. Hobbes, look at the stars. The universe just goes out forever and ever. It kind of makes you wonder why humanity considers itself such a big screaming deal. That's why we stay inside with our appliances. Calvin sees the big picture and he asks the big questions. In this strip, I have to describe it for you. For the most part, the strips are just conversation, so you don't need the visual. But in this one, Calvin has made a snowman and has given the snowman an arm made out of a branch, and the end of the branch is kind of a hand, and he's put a big snowball in the hand, and the snowman is looking at the snowball. Why is this snowman looking at a snowball? He's contemplating snowman evolution. Obviously, if he evolved from a snowball, it raises tough theological questions for him, like the morality of throwing one's precursors at someone? Sure, and what about shoveling one's genetic material off the sidewalk? Mom, wake up, come quick. What's wrong, Calvin? What's the matter? Do you think love is nothing but a biochemical reaction designed to make sure that our genes get passed on? Whatever it is, Calvin, it's all that's keeping me from strangling you right now. Mom's midnight reassurances are never very reassuring. You know, Hobbes, I can't figure out this death stuff. Why did that little raccoon have to die? He didn't do anything wrong. He was just little. What's the point of putting him here and taking him back so soon? It's either mean or it's arbitrary. And either way, I've got the heebie-jeebies. Why is it always night when we talk about these things? Calvin sees the big picture, he asks the big questions, and he's familiar with the standard answers that mainstream religions provide. But Calvin questions those answers. Hobbes, what if there's no afterlife? Suppose this is all we get. Oh, what the heck? I'll take it anyway. Yeah, but if I'm not going to be eternally rewarded for my behavior, I'd sure like to know now. Hobbes, do you believe in the devil? You know, a supreme evil being dedicated to the temptation, the corruption, and the destruction of humanity? I'm not sure humanity needs any help. You just can't talk to animals about these things. Hobbes, this whole Santa Claus thing just doesn't make sense. Why all the secrecy? Why all the mystery? If the guy exists, why doesn't he ever show himself and prove it? And if he doesn't exist, what's the meaning of all this? Isn't this a religious holiday? Yeah, but I've got the same questions about God. Calvin's got the same questions. Why all the secrecy? Why all the mystery? If the guy exists, why doesn't he ever show himself and prove it? Eventually, the questions get too big for Calvin and the answers too elusive and the possible answers too unpleasant. Calvin gives up. Hobbes, I've decided to stop caring about things. If you care, you just get disappointed all the time. If you don't care, nothing matters, so you're never upset. From now on, my rallying cry is, so what? That's a tough cry to rally around. So what? Hobbes, problems often look overwhelming at first. The secret is to break them into small, manageable chunks. If you deal with those, you're done before you know it. For example, for Monday, I'm supposed to read this entire chapter in our history book. It looks impossible, so I break the problem down. You focus on reading the first section. I ask myself, do I even care? The more you know, Hobbes, the harder it is to take decisive action. Once you become informed, you start seeing the complexities and shades of gray. You realize that nothing is as clear and simple as it first appears. Ultimately, knowledge is paralyzing. Being a man of action, I can't afford to take that risk. You're ignorant, but at least you act on it. And so Calvin stops caring. He turns away from the big picture. He stops asking the big questions. He stops questioning the traditional answers. He stops exploring life's complexity. He intellectually abdicates. He morally abdicates. And he begins to refuse to accept responsibility. Nothing I do is my fault, Hobbes. My family is dysfunctional, and my parents won't empower me. Consequently, I'm not self-actualized. My behavior is addictive functioning in a disease process of toxic codependency. I need holistic healing and wellness before I'll accept responsibility for my actions. One of us needs to stick his head in a bucket of ice water. I love the culture of victimhood. Miss Wormwood, I'd like you to sign this contract. It's an agreement that you'll compensate me for any loss of job income I may suffer as an adult because of a poor first-grade education. If you get a poor first-grade education, Calvin, it will be from your lack of effort, not mine. Go back to your desk. By golly, somebody ought to pay me if I don't learn anything. Calvin, your test was an absolute disgrace. It's obvious you haven't read any of the material. Our first president was not Chef Boyardee, and you ought to be ashamed to have turned in such preposterous answers. I just don't test well. Miss Wormwood? Yes, Calvin. My generation doesn't absorb information this way. Could you reduce everything to factoids? Turn to page 21, class. At least our televisions understand us. Television is Calvin's drug. It enables him to turn off his mind, to avoid real-life experience that might tug at his heart. Hobbes, I think rituals are important. My favorite ritual is eating 3 bowls of chocolate frosted sugar bombs and watching TV cartoons all Saturday morning. After a few hours, I'm so overstimulated, I can't sit still or even think straight. Sort of a transcendental experience, huh? Yeah, I achieve a lower consciousness. I need to describe this one to you too. Calvin is kneeling in front of a television in a dark room, so the light of the screen is illuminating him, and he's holding up in front of him a bowl. Oh, greatest of mass media, thank you for elevating emotion, reducing thought, and stifling imagination. Thank you for the artificiality of quick solutions and for the insidious manipulation of human desires for commercial purposes. This bowl of lukewarm tapioca represents my brain. I offer it in humble sacrifice. Bestow thy flickering light forever. In the next, Calvin is sitting in an overstuffed chair, and he seems to have collapsed. That is, his arms are dangling, his mouth is open, his eyes are half open. I try to make television watching a complete forfeiture of experience. Notice how I keep my jaw slack, so my mouth hangs open. I try not to swallow either, so I drool. And I keep my eyes half focused, so I don't use any muscles at all. I take a passive entertainment and extend the passivity to my entire being. I wallow in my lack of participation and response. I'm utterly inert. I'm going to leave before you start attracting flies. I can almost feel my neural transmitters shutting down. But once in a while, Calvin gets away from TV. He gets out of the house in a field or woods with his pal Hobbes, and his natural self starts to stir and to awaken. Almost everywhere you go, Hobbes, you can hear people, radios, and all kinds of engines. When you're actually confronted with the stillness of nature, it's kind of startling. Why, you can even hear yourself think. This is making me nervous. Let's go in. But he doesn't. He doesn't go in. He begins to come alive. Hobbes, I suppose the secret to happiness is learning to appreciate the moment. I, for example, take great pleasure in being right here, right now, doing what we're doing. Of course, you're supposed to be at school. I couldn't appreciate those moments. Why are you digging a hole? I'm looking for buried treasure. What have you found? A few dirty rocks, a weird root, and some disgusting grubs. On your first try, there's treasure everywhere. Calvin's not being sarcastic. He means it. It's treasure. He's delighted, and he's delighted to be able to share it. He doesn't yet realize, though, how important sharing is to his experience. I don't see how anyone could ever fall in love, Hobbes. People are such jerks. Sometimes they are, but look at all the colors on the trees today. Yeah, so what? I think it's more fun to see something like this with someone than just by yourself. And yeah, Calvin eventually comes to that. He realizes he's happiest when he's in nature with his friend, in some commonplace part of nature, some unremarkable place where everything seems miraculous. And this is the cartoon on the cover. It's a strip, but it's just, instead of 3 panels as usual, one day it was just 1 panel, and it was the panel on the cover. And Calvin is saying to Hobbes, look, a trickle of water running through some dirt. I'd say our afternoon just got booked solid. The religious message of Calvin and Hobbes, I think, is look at the big picture, ask the big questions, question the traditional answers, but don't give up. Don't stop thinking. Don't stop learning. Accept responsibility for your actions. Don't dull yourself. Stay alert. Pay attention. Look carefully. Keep your brain turned all the way up and your heart wide open. There's a heaven here to be shared with those that we love. I think that's the message of Calvin and Hobbes. And now, for the support of this congregation and its work, the morning offering will be gratefully received, and I hope freely given. And I guess I don't need to remind you, but now we're not passing the plate, but putting something in the plate as a precaution. And now this is our time for sharing joys and concerns. I know Donald has one, and he asked to come up here to the podium because he wants to be on the camera, I think.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donald. We're starting off a new year. And I thought about this all weekend, and I've been trying to think about what I have to say that I have joy of. Last year was a tough year for a lot of people after going through 2020, having the coronavirus and everything. And we didn't know what our future was, because I can remember last year on New Year's saying, what is 2021 going to bring us? More of this disease or what? So I sat around thinking on what I can do to make myself survive, which was stay apart from others and so on, as we did. But I can remember the day when a friend of mine, a good friend, Reverend Dr. David H. Ranke, knew I was in a situation and offered me a place to stay. And I was grateful for that. And I'm so grateful that he started my new year knowing that something that I could look forward to. Being homeless and is a tough situation in a city that I'm not familiar with of New Bedford. But I felt something, that there was somebody there offering something. Being a reverend himself, he gave me a lot of hope and told me no matter what I go through and what comes forward is always going to remember one thing. There's always hope. I can remember back when I was growing up as trying to be a Catholic, and I was told I was Catholic, but never understood it. But 7 years ago, I walked into the Unitarian Church in New Bedford on a Sunday morning after having breakfast from leaving a shelter. I walked into this church where I wasn't even familiar with. It was the Unitarian Church, and I was like, okay, something drew me in. I went, and after that day, my life changed. Someone came to me, his name was Reverend Rob Hughes, and said he could help me out and get me off the streets of New Bedford if I could share with him about what I'm going through, and I did. He gave me a place at the House of Hope in New Bedford, helping people fighting addiction and people I don't know. And I every day I helped people, and I felt so much joy knowing that I was doing something for the good purpose of my life, that maybe God was trying to lead me in the right direction. The Unitarian Church is like something I had no idea that was going to give me joy. Every day of last year, I kept thinking about what my next day was going to come, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to eat, survive, and so on. But every day I had hope, and I had somebody on my shoulder, which is always David, and he was there and guiding me and giving me confidence and saying, hey, don't worry. When I started coming to the church and listening to his services and him teaching me about what a universalist is, it opened up something inside my heart that made me feel joy. I can't explain it. I don't have the words to, but all I know is every day I wake up and I say, thank you, God, for giving me another day. I have a cardiac defibrillator implanted in my heart, run by a AA battery. And that's scary. And it started at a young age. And for the last 20 years, dealing with that machine inside my chest. But I never thought of the negative parts. When David used to tell me, I always say, hey, remember, think forward, think of something that you can do tomorrow that's going to make it better than it was today. And I thought that, and he gave me that hope, knowing that every day would be different. And here I stand today, a year later, feeling so much joy in being accepted into the Unitarian Church and being able to do the Zoom with everyone and people that are not here, being able to hear what's going on. When I can think back of what a Catholic church was always talk, and not listening, but not understanding. I never had someone to explain. But with the Universal Church, it's like, I feel it, I hear it. Dave explains so much to me and gives me that feeling of hope. Here it is today, January 3rd, I believe, in 2022. I'm still here, my heart's still ticking, my battery's still running. I have friends around me that I feel that they like me for who I am, not for the things that I might have done or being homeless or whatever it might be. People like to judge people all the time. But when I came to the Universalist Church and I realized that no one here to judge, I put my shoes on the same way everyone else does, my pants on the same way everyone else does. Sometimes I put them over my head, but that's okay. But I do realize joy is something that it's unexplainable. It's in my heart. I love myself today when I used to think negative. I've lost a lot of things. I've lost a lot of possessions, materialistic stuff. But the one thing I realize I do have today is love from this church and from people around me who are giving me some support and helping me understand what my life is about. If I can at least touch somebody with something that I might say, maybe that person can change, or something can happen like I did with the House of Hope, helping people fighting addiction, giving them hope and saying, listen, every day, it's not as bad. Let's forget about yesterday and start with tomorrow and today and continue. And people have changed, and I've seen that. And some have lost, some have gained. But that gave me joy. And today I am so joyful to be here with you guys, doing the Zoom with Richard, and especially David, who's given me so much, like another father in my life. My real father, my stepfather are gone, but he is giving me something to live for. When the day I was thinking of suicide, it was erased when every time David spoke, whenever he told me something of happiness and joy, some readings in the Bible, things that I've never known. And he talks about Isaiah, talks about so many different things that I just feel comfortable with. And I just want to say thank you all for giving me a part of the Unitarian Church. And for me, being here today gives me so much joy. I love you all in the heart. And I just wish everyone to have a great, great New Year. Thank you all.
Our closing hymn is the longest one of the hymnal. It takes 5 minutes to sing. It's 3 pages long, but I love it, and once in a while I like to use it, and I hope that's okay. Number 354, We Laughed, We Cried. May ours be a religion that, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Amen.